If you've ever clicked a single Pokemon video, I'm sure this guy has plagued your recommendations for a solid month afterwards. That's Wolfie Glick, the 2016 Pokemon World Champion, all around probably the best competitive Pokemon player of all time. If somebody wanted to reach the heights that Wolfie or the 2025 World Champion Giovanni Siski has reached, where do you even start? Well, I'm here today to answer this question and take you step by step through the competitive Pokemon new player experience, learning from almost scratch, all the way from learning the basics to building my first team and even entering my first tournament. Join me on this journey and together we can learn competitive Pokemon together, and hopefully one day I'll see you out there on the battlefield. Before that though, we should probably address what I mean by almost scratch. I did play a ton of competitive singles back in generations 4 and 5. I do know some basic terminology and concepts like defensive cores, pivoting, sweepers, and the like. Generation 5 is a different beast compared to the Pokemon they are running around these days though. Plus all my experience was in singles while VGC is double battles, introducing a whole nother layer of strategy to learn. This coupled with the fact that I never played Generation 6, 7, or 8, that means there's a huge blind spot I'm gonna have to cover. Anyway, where exactly do you start if you want to learn competitive Pokemon, aka VGC? Well, what if we just did literally the most basic thing ever and just googled how to learn VGC? Because it's the year 2025 and the internet is truly dead, the first results were given are Reddit threads. But the first actual link is VGCguide.com. This website is a joint project helmed by some of the top VGC players out there, so you guys definitely know their stuff. I'm not going to go into this website article by article. I encourage you to check it out yourself, even if you're a seasoned player. I think you can learn a thing or two from here. It's very well written. Instead, I'm going to highlight the main things that I personally took away from reading VGC Guide on stream, and highlight the specific ways that the authors address some of the common concerns a new player like myself might have. In the article for players coming from single battles, Aaron does a great job of explaining the major differences between the two formats without bashing singles for being simple or anything. I've definitely seen the singles versus VGC tribalism on backwater image boards and Twitter threads, so it is nice to see a welcoming yet informative vibe here. The big takeaways for me here, personally, as someone who's coming from singles, is Protect is huge in doubles while a little less common in singles. There's a bunch of moves you'll see all the time in VGC but not in singles. That spread moves such as Earthquake do less damage in doubles than they do in singles. One really cool thing on this website too is the articles will include linked Pokemon Showdown replays to showcase concepts in real battles. That can cover more learning styles than a simple text article can. I also really like this article about how to watch VGC battles on stream. This one is more directed at non-players, more so than aspiring players, which I think is fantastic since we have to remember. There are official brackets for children and teenagers at regional and world tournaments. We want parents to understand their kids' hobbies and support their kids and watch what their kids are doing and bring them that, and I think this is great for that. Another great one here is this article, Everyone is Learning All the Time. Here, Aaron addresses my main concern of how the hell do you actually keep straight what 1,000 Pokemon can do. Aaron assures the reader that even seasoned vets can forget stuff all the time, and don't actually know everything themselves. He even provides learning methods to get around this, such as focusing on the top 50 common Pokemon you might see After Aaron sets a very welcoming and reassuring vibe in the introductory articles, we can move on to the meat and potatoes of competitive Pokemon. The numbers. In my opinion, EVs are the second most daunting thing to learn outside of what Pokemon are capable of, since they're so customizable. But our boy Aaron breaks down EVs in a practical manner, even explaining how they affect damage calculations and explaining how they affect kill thresholds. Aaron also provides the simple option of just pumping 2 stats to the max with EVs instead of getting cute with it. Unrelated, but I kinda lost it on stream when I saw Kartana for the first time. They really are min-maxing the hell out of the Pokemon they make these days, man. Anyway, another A+ article from Aaron. A lot of alliteration, eh? How about we let Aaron take a break and move on to our next author, Aaron. Aaron Cybertron Zeng to be exact. He's pretty good at Pokemon. Aaron Zeng does a great job in his article about luck's impact on competitive Pokemon, where he goes into detail about how to reframe the luck aspect cognitively, including examples from his own pro career. I really like this one specifically about how he lost semifinals at Worlds once because he let Thundurus status his team up with Thunderwave and axe him with full paralysis and confusion. Aaron admits that he failed to take care of the Thundurus, and he himself allowed the variance and luck factor into the match more so than it should have been present. I'm definitely guilty of doing this back in my teen years of just chalking up a loss to hacks, instead of thinking about how I can minimize the chance of randomness impacting the game. The article that helped me get into the doubles mindset the most though is this one by Aaron Zeng on analyzing your opponent's team. Here Aaron explains that he looks for obvious combinations on his opponent's team, especially since they tend to be strong lead options that have to be accounted for, and also provides some common archetypes of strong duos, most of which utilize moves not found in singles. The first duo Aaron lays out are the ones whose abilities mesh together. This one is the simplest to me to understand, especially since I remember the good old days of permanent weather in Gen 5. You got your Kyogre plus Kingdra, you got your Tyranitar plus Excadrill, that sort of thing. The next duo is a Fake Out user plus a strong attacker. Fake Out is a move that has increased priority, meaning it goes before other moves regardless of the Pokemon speed, and it will guaranteed flinch the opponent, preventing it from acting that turn. Sounds pretty broken, right? Well, you can only use Fake Out the first turn a Pokemon is out. Fake Out isn't really something people ran in singles, but from what I've gathered from reading this website, VGC loves spamming Fake Out. Anyway, this combo will rely on a Fake Out user to shut down one of the opponent's Pokemon in turn 1 and let its partner pop off as the threat from the opposing team is now halved. Our next common duo is a Speed Control plus a strong attacker. Speed Control seems like one of the most important things for a VGC team. After all, going first is pretty good when your opponent has 2 Pokemon that can hit your one guy. Speed Control wasn't a huge concept in singles and really only manifested in the Sticky Web entry hazard. You definitely didn't have people running Tailwind or Electro Web just to boost your team's speed or lower the opponent's speed like Aaron outlines here. I know all about Thunder Wave though. Too well, some might say. Lastly, we have Redirection plus Setup. Redirection obviously isn't something found in singles since what do you have to redirect? This is going to be moves like Rage Powder and Follow Me, which have increased priority like the previously mentioned Fake Out. I can see Redirection being necessary to enable hitting a Swords Dance or 2 since your Pokemon is under threat from being attacked twice in one turn as opposed to once in singles. Aaron also dives into how to identify which of your Pokemon to bring to the actual battle. VGC is a format where you can bring 4 of your 6 Pokemon to a battle. So choosing the correct 4 is key. Certain Pokemon are obviously going to be good in certain matchups. Aaron gives us the example of having the Steel Grass Ferrothorn on your team against a Sun team with lots of fire damage. Obviously a 4 times weakness to fire is terrible against a team like that, so Ferrothorn riding the bench is the best bet. Now keep in mind that does not necessarily mean Ferrothorn is bad. Ferrothorn is insane against rain teams since they tend to spam water moves which Ferrothorn resists. Ferrothorn can threaten water types with Grass Stab, and the rain weakens incoming fire attacks on the Ferrothorn. Identifying when a specific role a Pokemon provides is unnecessary is also important according to Aaron Zeng. The example he gives is bringing your Tailwind user against an obvious Trick Room team. Trick Room is another common VGC move that reverses the turn order, so the slowest Pokemon goes first and the fastest goes last. Against teams that run this strategy, Speed Control isn't necessary, so why bring it? Oh man, I'm tired of reading. I think Aaron Zeng has some good information on how to analyze this VGC team and think in terms of combinations and roles. So why don't we try building our first team together, shall we? This stream was done during the Regulation I format during Scarlet and Violet, which let us use pretty much every Pokemon outside of Mythicals, but we are limited to 2 of the restricted Pokemon. These are going to generally be your box legendaries. I actually think a restricted format like this is the best place to start if you're learning competitive Pokemon, since you can select the big, powerful, restricted legendary centerpiece of your team, and then build around it from there, as opposed to like a more freeform format like Regulation H, where you don't even know where you start. You might face option paralysis. I decided to start this team off with Lugia, who I already know is probably the worst legendary in the game. Lugia was never really that great back in the day, but I never played Ubers back in the day, so I'm only really familiar with a handful of legendaries are even capable of, honestly. Plus I'm a Johto Joey, so Lugia is my favorite legendary. Look at her, she's adorable. How can you not love her? Lugia is more of a setup stall type Pokemon with big defenses, healing, Calm Mind to boost its damage and special defense even higher. Since we're playing VGC and Protect sounds mandatory, I slap Protect onto Lugia along with both a Flying Stab and a Psychic Stab, and Calm Mind to set up. I also give Lugia Dark for its Terra type since Lugia is a known setup Pokemon, and Terra Dark will allow it to be immune to Taunt or Encore from prankster Pokemon like Whimsicott. Lugia seems like it'll be a little too slow paced to do anything of value even after a few Calm Mind boosts. Pairing it with a redirection Pokemon like Aaron Zeng outlined feels like it'll be a little too slow paced. I checked out this one website, Pikalytics.com, that was mentioned on VGC Guide, and it's pretty useful. Pikalytics has stats on usage rates of various Pokemon in different formats and common items, EV spreads, moves, you name it. Pikalytics puts me onto Miraidon as a powerful option, and I think it would pair pretty well with Lugia. My logic here is like, have you ever seen them sleight of hand magician videos? Where some guy does like a shirt pop type thing and keep your eyes distracted while his hands are doing some crafty sleight of hand trick? Miraidon is the shirt pop and Lugia is the trick. I'm hoping Miraidon can be an immediately threatening presence and demand all the attention from the opponent, while Lugia is to its side slowly ramping up, almost as a form of like soft redirection. For Miraidon's moveset, I just copy the top options on Pikalytics and go for a Life Orb instead of the choice specs. Since I don't really know what I'm doing, and I don't want a choice item to lock me into using a bad move until I switch. For a third Pokemon, I take the easy route and just go for Mr. VGC himself, Incineroar. Dude is like the most common Pokemon in like every format, almost every style team, and has won more money in tournaments than every other Pokemon, so it's gotta be a good choice, right? Once again, I just copy what Pikalytics tells me is popular, which ends up being the 4 attacks Assault Vest set. For our next slot, I decided to go for an actual redirection Pokemon since keeping heat off Miraidon itself seems like a good option. My Twitch chat tells me Ogerpon Cornerstone is like the best redirector, plus she's a cutie. So she joins the team with yet another copy-pasted Pikalytics set. Next I wanted a really slow, powerful Pokemon in case the opponent sets up Trick Room, preferably physical since Miraidon and Lugia are both special. My chat puts me onto a Pokemon I never heard of called Ursaluna who looks totally broken, and it really brings me back to the good old days of Guts Conkeldurr in Generation 5. Lastly, I decided on a speed control guy since all of the articles we read made it sound key. I don't really know who actually learns Tailwind since I'm totally singles-brained, but luckily, Pokemon Showdown lets you just filter by moves. Eventually, I settle on Illumise since it has Prankster allowing me to go first regardless of speed. I give Illumise Tailwind for speed control, Fake Tears to drop somebody's special defense to enable Miraidon and Lugia hit really hard, Encore, and U-turn. I also give Illumise Covert Cloak, a new item that prevents secondary effects of moves. Pretty sure Game Freak created this just to deal with fake out spam, but who knows. As for the VV spreads, I take VGC Guide's advice and just do max for 2 stats for every Pokemon. Even Incineroar, which I know isn't what people do, but hey, we're still learning, right? With everyone set, let's hop into our first VGC battle. Right from the jump, I'm a little concerned. I know what literally like 2 of these Pokemon do, and I know one of them is peak shenanigans. My initial thought as a noob is always bring both restricted Pokemon since they have the big numbers, but logically I'm pretty sure there's plenty of situations where you do bring just one. I take Lugia and Miraidon along with Mr. VGC and Ogerpon because you can't go wrong with Incineroar, and Rock Grass seems pretty solid to the other guy's Pokemon. First thing I do turn 1 is I immediately just start Googling all the words over here because like I don't know what any of them mean, man. Like what even are terrains? When were these added to the series? Please help. Anyway, basically, electric terrain means no sleep and big electric damage. Iron Bundle's Quark Drive is basically the same as Photosynthesis that my Great Tusk has in my Scarlet playthrough. There are probably like seed items for like every terrain, I guess. Since both of those Pokemon have things requiring electric terrain, I think he wrote that I'd lead with Miraidon and I played into his hands. I know Drifloon is going to get up to shenanigans immediately, so I just try to take him out really fast with an Electro Drift from Miraidon, while Incineroar uses Fake Out on Iron Bundle to slow it down. I guess this is what Aaron Zeng meant in the section about Strong Attacker but plus Fake Out user, huh? Drifloon gets to work with the shenanigans popping Minimize and dodging Electro Drift, while Iron Bundle protects the Fake Out. Turn 2, Incineroar gets Encored into Fake Out and Miraidon's Electro Drift gets disabled. It feels like we're pretty far behind momentum-wise. That's kind of doomed, but hey, it can't get worse, right? I swap the Encored Incineroar out for Ogerpon and hit a Dazzling Gleam out of pure desperation. I'm really feeling welcome the VGC when Ogerpon gets frozen by the Ice Beam, but Dazzling Gleam activates Iron Bundle's eject button, which forces it to switch it out. I protect on Miraidon and hope he just decides to finish off Ogerpon, but my opponent intelligently uses the 2v1 to stockpile on Drifloon and keep getting bigger and bigger, which is a little concerning. But its damage hasn't increased yet, just its bulk. I Terrastallize into Fairy on Miraidon and my opponent finishes Ogerpon with a Volt Switch and swaps to Iron Bundle, who falls to my Dazzling Gleam. Pokemon Showdown kind of has training wheels, and if you mouse over a Pokemon, it'll tell you its potential speed, so that tells me pretty quickly that Iron Bundle is a disgusting creature and faster than light. Iron Bundle is a Water-Ice type, so it's a huge threat to my entire team. It going down makes me feel like I could bring Lugia in now. I figure he would go back to his Miraidon again, so I'm hoping the electric weak Lugia draws his attention from my Miraidon to score a kill, but he just Volt Switches my Miraidon and goes out to Calyrex, who doesn't take a whole lot of damage from a Dazzling Gleam. I decided to full send with Electro Drift on Calyrex since I have zero idea of anything's potential damage, and I'm just going to assume Miraidon is broken and can one-shot everything with that move. My opponent correctly reads this with a switch to his Miraidon, who double resists Electro Drift, but Lugia manages to sneak in a Calm Mind after taking a bit of damage from Drifloon, so I guess we're making a little bit of progress. My Miraidon goes down from its own Life Orb recoil, forcing me to send in my last Pokemon, Incineroar. I kind of tunnel vision here and see the Fake Out in the Calm Mind turn, forgetting that Drifloon could just disable my Calm Mind. I think that might be a bad habit new players like myself might fall into. Just like see the play that my Pokemon can do without even considering what the other side is capable of. This turn is a wash, but it does let Lugia use its leftovers to recover back to 100% HP, re-enabling its multi-scale ability that cuts incoming damage by a huge amount. And this is pretty big, because on the next turn, Miraidon hits a super effective Volt Switch on Lugia, but it does just 31% HP thanks to the multi-scale. Incineroar also hits a critical knockoff on the incoming Calyrex, managing to score the kill and bring the battle to a 2v2. On the following turn, I take a moment and think. My opponent has been reading me pretty perfectly almost every step of the way, so I'm going to assume he knows what he's doing. The obvious play on my part here is to protect on Lugia to block an incoming super effective electric attack and stall out the electric terrain boost on Miraidon, which is down after the next turn. I figure he knows that and will actually attack Incineroar instead. And also, based on his Miraidon continually outspeeding my Miraidon, I'm pretty sure it's a Choice Scarf and thus no Protect, so I double attack into Miraidon. It turns out, perfectly read my opponent and finish off the Miraidon. From here, Drifloon can't do anything to the Lugia as I expected, and we eventually score the win after several more turns. Okay, so we won, but I'm not sure how to feel. Without that critical on Calyrex, I'm pretty sure we were doomed, but I'll accept that since Ogerpon did get frozen immediately. Also, that hard read to finish Miraidon's pretty good, I'm not to toot my own horn. But let's actually analyze the game like VGC Guide suggests doing, so we improve and see where we went wrong and how we apply to what we just learned. I liked our lead choice. It fell into one of the strong archetypes Aaron Zeng outlined in a strong attacker and fake out user and gave us a powerful start. I also think we did a good job of analyzing the opponent's game plan of setting up relentlessly with the Drifloon and stalling out a win. We took what Aaron said about minimizing RNG and taking a target out before it lets the variance go too far, and applied it when we opened with the Electro Drift on Drifloon. Although I did dodge it, I still think that's the correct play. Once Drifloon did get too far gone, we did correctly play around keeping our Lugia safe, keeping it in the back until the threatening Calyrex and Iron Bundle went down, which managed to let us set up parallel to the Drifloon and win. I don't think I did a good job of reading my opponent though. At pretty much every step of the way, he continually read what I was going to do and played around it perfectly, but I did manage to improve towards the ending with the game-winning play. Alright, let's hop into game 2. I know what these three guys do, and I know what Clefable does, but I'm not really sure what Flare's game plan is. Mousing over Calyrex Shadow tells me it's insanely fast, and I figure it's a special attacker based on having, like, the two most special coded types in the game. Since he has two incredibly fast attackers, speed control seems important here, so I bring Illumise for Tailwind, Miraidon to nuke something right out the gate, thanks to the Tailwind boost. Ogerpon sends Grass Stab and a Groudon seems pretty good, and I also bring Lugia since if it can set up with Terra Dark, nothing can touch it once we remove Groudon out of the picture. Turn 1 I set up the Tailwind Illumise, which allows Miraidon to act next despite initially being slower than Calyrex. Since Generation 8, speed has been dynamic, so if a Pokemon's speed changes mid-turn, the actual turn order will change during that specific turn instead of the next one. This is what makes the Regieleki with Electro Web, described on VGC Guide, such a strong speed control option. I go for the immediate nuke on Calyrex, but he protects with the Electro Drift, and Incineroar one-shots Illumise with a critical Flare Blitz. Ogerpon comes in next, and we outspeed both of his Pokemon, and I figure we have Lethal on both. I have Ogerpon hit the Rock-type Ivy Cudgel on Incineroar, and Miraidon go for Electro Drift again on Calyrex. Ogerpon does manage to one-shot the Incineroar, but Calyrex swaps out to Groudon, who's immune to the Electro Drift. I quickly check out Clefairy's Friend Guard ability on Google, and a pure support Pokemon, so it poses little threat to us. Groudon's signature move, Precipice Blade, is super effective on Miraidon, so I switch it to Lugia, who's immune thanks to its typing, and Spiky Shield Ogerpon. Since Lugia has multi-scale up, it can shrug off an attack from Groudon, and I go for a Calm Mind and an Ivy Cudgel on Clefairy to start lowering its health. However, my opponent switches to Calyrex and it loses half of its health. On the following turn, I Terrestrialized Lugia into Dark since it resists Calyrex's stab options and Calm Mind again. Shrug off a Heat Crash thanks to Multiscale, and chunk Groudon with Power Whip while Calyrex nasty plots. I Spiky Shield with Ogerpon in case Calyrex decides to finish it off, and then it uses Astral Barrage. It hits both of my Pokemon, but only deals 20% to Lugia thanks to Calm Mind and the Dark Terror. Lugia finishes off Calyrex with a critical Aero Blast, but the critical definitely didn't matter at this point. My opponent surrenders and I pick up the win. Looking back at this game, I think we did an okay job of reading of our opponent, successfully recognized the importance of speed control, and correctly identified Lugia as our win condition, and got it into a winning position by playing around the Groudon. 2 games into my VGC career, and things were looking pretty good, but I am getting lucky with the teams I'm facing. Both times now, the opponent's Pokemon were ones I recognized and knew what they were capable of. Also, neither guy really did anything special with the terrestrialized Pokemon. Our luck's gonna change soon because I go on a huge losing streak here. Whether it was forgetting that my opponent can also terrestrialize, forgetting that they can also use Tailwind, or having literally like no idea what these Pokemon do, I lost game after game after game. Despite losing so many games, I actually learned quite a bit. I got to see what a lot of the common restricted Pokemon like the Calyrexes are capable of and their general game plan. I got to see some of the most common Terra types certain Pokemon will carry. And most importantly, I learned that Urshifu was a plague on society and the Generation 8 was a mistake. Overall, playing games and losing a bunch is probably the best way of learning what all the Pokemon do. While I can look up Calyrex on Cerebi on Pikalytics and look at its big numbers and move pool, I think it's most important to see how it actually operates in the context of an actual game and the common Pokemon it gets paired with. Pretty good stream, I would say. After sleeping on it and coming back to the VGC grind a few days later, I came to a conclusion. This team ain't gonna work for me. If I'm gonna learn competitive Pokemon, I wanna learn all of the aspects of it, including how to actually build the team on the game itself. The big problem with my team is I have Pokemon Scarlet, so I can't access Miraidon, and Lugia is also locked to the Violet DLC. So we head back to the drawing board and I decided to build around Koraidon since I already have him. If we look at the restricted Pokemon we have access to with the Blueberry Academy DLC, we can choose between these guys. Groudon seems kind of redundant since Koraidon already sets the sun. Reshiram kind of sucks based on what I remember from Generation 5. And I don't know what a Glastrier or Solgaleo even are. That leaves us with Ho-Oh, who I also quite like because it's from Johto. For our next slot I wanted Incineroar, but I didn't want 3 fire Pokemon on the team. I kind of got tricked by Koraidon setting Sun and spamming Flare Blitz and totally forgot he's actually Dragon Fighting and not Dragon Fire. This brain fart sends me down the path of a Rillaboom, and I make an even bigger blunder in Tunnel Vision on the whole. Protect this big VGC thing, and throw Protect on it while also giving it an Assault Vest which prevents it from using Protect. Next, I decided I wanted somebody with Wide Guard support. Wide Guard is one of those VGC only moves that like blocks spread moves from both Pokemon. From the previous stream, Calyrex, Shadow, and Ice with their spread moves seem absolutely broken, so I figured Wide Guard would be a good counter. After filtering by Wide Guard on Showdown, I settled on Bastiodon. Next, I throw Flutter Mane on the team because it seemed insane every time I faced it, and I can taunt potential Trick Room users, and most importantly, I already have it. Lastly, I take my chat's advice and throw Raging Bolt onto the team because it's apparently overpowered. Once again, I copy most of the sets and EVs right from Pikalytics because I think that I need to learn a little more about the meta before I can start customizing things. This stream, we performed a lot better. We're still getting knowledge checked as I'm still learning what a lot of these Pokemon even do, what Terra types Pokemon run. I'm not doing a good job of playing around terrestrialization either, but I think our team is decently constructed and everyone fulfills a particular role. We win some games, lose some games. I run to Cerebi to finally learn what Terrapagos does because I absolutely cannot infer what it does from playing against it multiple times. Seems kind of cracked, honestly. Despite the Bastiodon single-handedly winning games against Calyrex Ice Trick Room teams, I think I'm cooking too hard and I should just use standard good Pokemon. Turns out a month after the stream, a guy bringing Bastiodon to World, so I kind of feel vindicated. Anyway, I tried a few different options before settling on Brute Bonnet as Bastiodon's replacement. It's still slow, so it performs well in Trick Room. It has Sucker Punch to threaten Calyrex Shadow. And it has the ever-overpowered Spore. Dude, it's been like 15 years since I tried competitive Pokemon, and like this move is still crazy, man. I'm really liking how this team plays, and it feels like I have solid options to play into everything. Assuming I know what the Pokemon is even capable of anyway. By now, I'm getting a good grasp on what sorts of movesets Pokemon run and their roles. For example, after seeing it a few times, I know I'd expect Kyogre Tornadus to bust out a Tailwind Water Spout turn 1. Calyrex Shadow Rider is going to be usually running a Focus Sash, stuff like that. I also decided to start taking down notes and identifying good matchups for me. Here I began listing out the different restricted Pokemon I could face and identify which of my Pokemon perform well against them. If a Pokemon ends up performing well against both restricteds, I should probably definitely bring them as one of my 4. For example, I think my Flutter Mane set is good into Calyrex Ice since it can taunt in order to prevent Trick Room. It's also good against Miraidon since it outspeeds and can nuke it with Moon Blast. If my opponent is running Calyrex Ice and Miraidon, I think Flutter Mane ends up being a strong lead choice on my end. Now, I could be entirely wrong with my assessment of Flutter Mane here, but I think identifying matchups like this is a good method of learning. Overall, I think this second stream went really well, and I got a good feel for what all the common meta threats are capable of and how to play into them. I'm still making stupid mistakes like using Fake Out or Sucker Punch when Psychic Terrain is up, or trying to use Protect against Urshifu, but hey, even the vets have brain farts, right? No reason to beat yourself up or stuff like that. In between this stream and the last, there's a big whole announcement about the next upcoming regulation for VGC. To explain regulations briefly, think of them as like different seasons with different restrictions. For example, our previous team was for Regulation I, where you could use pretty much any Pokemon, but you're limited to 2 of the box legendaries. Regulation H is on the exact opposite side of the power pendulum. You can use only standard Pokemon. No legendaries, no mythicals, not even paradox Pokemon. Nothing fancy. Game Freak also decided to make a really weird decision at this time and announced that their next regulation for rank battles on the actual game is Regulation J, which is basically just Regulation I with mythicals alone. However, the upcoming official tournaments will be played on Regulation H. This is like super bizarre to me as a new player. I'm not sure if this is something Game Freak has done in the past, but how is little Timmy who wants to play in the junior division supposed to practice legitimately? It almost feels like some endorsement of Pokemon Showdown since it's the only way of playing Regulation H. Either way, we're faced with 1 or 2 new regulations. Our current Koraidon Ho team could be used in Reg I, but I already know that's 0 chance I stand up to Arceus and all other nonsensical mythicals that are running around these days. Mythicals are all given away through events or esoteric means like trading up from Pokemon Ranger, so I have no actual way of accessing them. Honestly, this does kind of feel bad, but realistically, Gen 9 is at the end of its life cycle, so I understand them running the all bets are off, go have fun regulation. I decided to pivot to Regulation H since it's the official one, and you know what that means, more team building. Regulation H is a little more freeform than Regulation I was. In Regulation I just chose my big strong centerpiece legendary and built around that to enable them the best. But in a format without big centerpiece Pokemon like Restricteds, where do you even begin? I decided I should start off with my favorite Pokemon of all time, Sandshrew. Well, Sandslash in this case. Sandslash is pretty power crept by the Gen 5's Excadrill, who has the same ability, better attack and speed, and the additional steel type. If I'm going to use Sandslash, I think I need to play to the few tools it has over Excadrill. One of them is Gunk Shot, a 120 base power poison move, but is relatively inaccurate. Leech Life is another big one that Sandslash has over Excadrill, but I chose not to run it. Since Sandslash is reliant on Sandstorm, we throw in the old head of competitive singles, Tyranitar. I give him the standard Rock Slide knockoff low kick set, but decide not to use the usual Terra Blast that people run and opt for Ice Punch. I didn't like the idea of having to commit Terra in order for Terra Blast to be useful. I kind of just picked a random move. Speaking of Terra, Tyranitar is set to flying since it can dodge Sandslash's Earthquake, which hits everyone, not just the opponents. Goldengo is like the highest Pokemon by usage in Regulation H, and it's immune to the Sandstorm chip due to its steel typing, so it joins the team. Basic Life Orb Nasty Plot set straight from Pikalytics. Now, I'm not too sure who to throw on the team. I kind of start scrolling down the list aimlessly till I see Flygon. Flygon isn't very good and is a bit of a meme. Don't worry bros, Mega Flygon soon, it's okay. But it has Levitate to dodge our own Earthquakes and is ground type so it's immune to Sandstorm chip. I'm not really sure what to actually run on Flygon, but I see that it does learn Feint, which can break the opponent's Protector Wide Guard. Wide Guard seemed pretty common in Regulation I, and it would shut down our Earthquake spam strategy, so I take it. I also decided to give it Breaking Swipe and Struggle Bug. These two are moves that hit both targets and lower their attack and special attack respectively. Ursaluna Blood Moon is another ground type, immune to Sandstorm, and is also pretty high on the usage ranking, so I just toss it onto the team. I round out the team with Sableye since I figure we need somebody supportive, and I also give him the Safety Goggles item that blocks the Sandstorm damage. During the first battle with the new team, I come to a horrible realization. I have to learn an entire new meta of Pokemon Dude just after learning what the hell a Calyrex is. God damn it. Oh well, the Pokemon may change but roles and concepts don't. Surprisingly, we don't do too bad this stream. Sure, I lose some games due to the raw lack of knowledge. I mean, what the hell is this thing, dude? I hope I never see this creature again. Since you tend to face a lot of really wacky teams at lower rankings on the Pokemon Showdown ladder, I heeded Aaron's advice about focusing on the top Pokemon in the format. The first two Regulation H streams were mostly working up the ranking against esoteric teams while just learning how our own Pokemon function together. It ends up not being too good, actually. At a certain point, the team began feeling like two fragmented teams smashed together, and I felt like I didn't have that many viable lead combos. For example, Sandslash worked well with Tyranitar and Flygon since Tyranitar provided Sand and could Terra Flying, while Flygon could provide Tailwind and had Levitate to dodge Earthquake. However, Sandslash didn't really fit well with Ursaluna, Goldengo, or Sableye, since he would just nuke them with Earthquake or just didn't really have any synergy. The first alternative setup I tried was dropping Ursaluna and Sableye for Amoonguss and Talonflame. Talonflame served as our Tailwind support instead of Flygon. Its ability Gale Wings allows it to set up Tailwind with priority, ensuring that our Pokemon will go first. I also gave it Will-O-Wisp to cut the attack of physical attackers in half, which I think synergizes well with the relatively higher bulk on our team. Amoonguss served as our Redirector and Sleep support. It is excellent at Trick Room is set up thanks to its incredibly low speed. This team composition felt much more malleable, and it didn't really feel like I was pigeonholed into certain duos. I don't want to dive into every permutation, but let's go back to Sandslash for example. He now worked well with Flygon, Talonflame, and Tyranitar since they can all enable him and all dodges Earthquake. While Amoonguss is susceptible to Earthquake, the redirection lets Sandslash safely set up a Swords Dance. I think that's the overall goal with team building. We want as many complementary sets as possible. By our third stream with this team, we're starting to see frequently Pokemon like Rillaboom, Incineroar, Arcaludon, Kingambit, Sneasler, and the Ursalunas. You know, the actual common meta threats. We also start being able to identify the different team archetypes. Indeed, means either it's a Trick Room team or a Psy-Spam team. A strategy where Psychic Terrain is put up the boosted damage of Psychic moves, and a strong Psychic Pokemon just spams Expanding Force, which becomes a spread move in Terrain. There's Sun teams, Rain teams, and the Rare Sand team. Snow teams don't really seem to be a thing to me. Alola and Ninetales just seems to be tossed into more balanced compositions, just for weather control and into the strong Aurora Veil move. I swear to God, at a certain point, all you face with this team with slight permutations over and over again, which is actually a good thing, I would say. Being able to recognize certain cores like this Rillaboom, Kingambit, Sneasler one is an important part of game planning and building a team. After all, if we can count on Rillaboom being on like every other team, we'll need a way to deal with it, right? This is where I start crunching some numbers for specific matchups. Pokemon Showdown also features a damage calculator, which will calculate the damage based on all the different wacky variables. This is how I learned that Terra Poison Gungshot from Sandslash will one-shot the majority of Rillaboom sets. Since Rillaboom is incredibly common and grassy terrain halves the damage at Earthquake, you can pretty much count on Rillaboom switching in on the Sandslash if it isn't already there. Here's also where I decided to shake up the team comp again. I felt like I could drop Talonflame and compress its role as a Tailwind setter back into Flygon, and Kilowattrel takes its slot. Kilowattrel is going to be our Glass Cannon with choice specs locking it into one move until it switches. I give it Electro Web for speed control, Air Slash for a flying stab, Volt Switch to deal big damage and switch out, and Discharge to hit everybody for a lot of damage and possibly inflict paralysis. I really like the discharge angle for this team. Sandslash and Kilowattrel can just spam their big spread moves as they're immune to each other, and Flygon can pair well with either of them as it's immune to both ground and electric. I round out the team by dropping Amoonguss in exchange for Incineroar since I want to Fake Out and Intimidate to support us. I do think there's some sauce with these pieces, but we kinda go on a massive losing streak. Incineroar requires a solid amount of finesse to use properly since you need to safely pivot in and out of combat to stack Intimidates and Fake Outs. This is made even more difficult with the prevalence of two strong Pokemon carrying the ability Defiant, which effectively gives them a +1 attack if they're intimidated. After 2 solid hours of getting a ass kick, I decided to play around some of the EV spreads. Most of our Pokemon are commonly used ones, so I trust the spreads on Beagleytix, but for Flygon and Sandslash, we'll have to cook up our own. In order to do this, I create a new team on Pokemon Showdown and throw in Sandslash and the threats I wanted to compare it to, like Indeedee or Sneasler. Then I just pump the appropriate EVs and IVs into the comparison Pokemon and play with Sandslash's speed until it's the lowest required to outspeed its particular target. After playing around a while, I settle on a Jolly Nature and 196 speed EVs. I put the extra leftover 60 speed that was in there into HP to complement its solid base defense. 196 speed EVs with a Jolly Nature allows Sandslash with Sandrush active to outspeed max speed Choice Scarf and DD Mail. Indeedee Sneasler is one of the most common leads we've been running into, and it turns out Sandslash can actually one-shot the Indeedee with Gungshot after going into Terra. This isn't a reliable strategy at all, mind you. Gungshot isn't the most accurate move in the game, and Indeedee also commonly runs Focus Sash, which would just let it survive Gungshot and kill Sandslash in one hit. Even if our plan is suboptimal, I think we're on the right track by maximizing our EVs like this and playing around with the speed tiers. It shows that we're considering the common duos in the meta and planning accordingly. Most of the other EVs are pretty standard, but I do change Kilowattrel over to 220 speed EVs and a Timid Nature, with the leftover EVs and HP. This sets Kilowattrel at 190 speed, putting it just 1 point faster than a max speed Sneasler before Unburden. Over the next stream with this team, we start getting downhill plays. We use Incineroar's Intimidate and Flygon's Breaking Swipe to lower the opponent's stats, forcing them to switch to shake off the stat changes We use those opportunities to pivot Kilowattrel Sandslash in safely. I do notice I'm not bringing the Goldengo too often, but when I do, it single-handedly wins me some games. I kind of feel like we don't have the proper support for it, despite it being a good Pokemon. Anyway, I begin taking notes on the leads I'm seeing and begin preparing potential counter leads similar to what we were doing in Regulation I. Some of them I got a pretty good idea what to do, but there's some I got no clue on, man, like notably King Gambit or Rillaboom. Another big problem I'm running into is we don't have a good way of preventing Trick Room from going up. Fortunately, Tyranitar is such a beefy boy with Assault Vest that he can just stand up decently while the Torkoal and Ursaluna Blood Moon. We can handle those guys with some expert pivoting. As for the regular Ursaluna, I don't know, man. That guy's crazy. Our only hope is knocking off the Flame Orb the turn it comes in. Despite these weak points in team building, I do think I'm improving in terms of raw gameplay. I'm hitting some good predicts on switches, predicting terras, and playing into them and figuring out the win condition against particular comps. All that good stuff. After a final showdown stream with this team, we end up with our ranking at the low 1300s. Is this a good rating? I don't know, man. I had fun. Alright, the Pokemon Showdown arc is over, so what's next? Well, if we're going to play in a tournament, we actually need to build our team on Pokemon Scarlet. Thankfully, this is pretty easy to do in Regulation H. I have pretty much every Pokemon already since none of them are particularly rare. The hardest one to obtain is the Incineroar, which requires upgrading the Canyon Biome and Indigo Disc DLC for a whopping 3,000 barbecue points. After that though, the team is assembled in a primordial state anyway. Our first order of business is straightening out everybody's abilities. Incineroar, Sandslash, and Kilowattrel all have their basic abilities which kinda suck. In order to obtain their actually useful hidden abilities, we'll need to use an ability patch on each one of them. Don't get these confused with ability capsules, which just change a Pokemon's ability to their second ability. If they have one, that is. Ability patches are incredibly rare, and I go on a goddamn odyssey to obtain these things, man. First, I found out that they can drop from 6-star Terra raids, which I can't even actually access. After some googling around, it turns out you need to complete a bunch of lower ranked Terra raids in order to unlock the harder ones. I do this for like an hour, but even in the higher raids, the drop rate is so low. Next, I look up some static locations in the overworld. You can find one on the Terrarium core, but I didn't finish the DLC at this point, so I couldn't fly up there. You can also get 5 from defeating literally every single trainer in the DLC. So I began working on that, and then I realized it'll take me literally forever. Eventually in chat, someone explains that the item printer is a thing that you can use in the League Club room. Basically, you can shove severed Pokemon parts and some BP into these gachapon machines, and it potentially gets ability patches. This is still an absurdly low chance, but hey, I do love me a gacha game. This is definitely the best way of grinding ability patches, but it still does take me a long time. Long enough to where I decided doing it off stream would be best, but hey, we get them eventually. Next on the list is changing everyone's Terra types. You can actually just do this by heading to that restaurant in Medali where you battled Larry and talk to the chef there. This guy will take your Terra shards of the appropriate type and feed your Pokemon a sandwich made of literal broken glass. Don't worry about it. After that, we can head to Montañero where we battle the Ghost Gym Leader and talk to this guy in the backyard to Hyper Train our Pokemon. In exchange for a bottle cap, this guy will increase one of our Pokemon's IVs to the max of 31. This won't take quite a few bottle caps as we want to do this with literally every single stat, but you can actually just buy the bottle caps from the Chansey supply store. Also, the previously mentioned item printer can give gold bottle caps, which will max out all of the stats for individual Pokemon. Pretty good stuff. I do decide not to use a bottle cap on the unnecessary attack stat, meaning no special attack for my physical attackers and no special attack for my physical attackers. Finally, we're left with perhaps the most annoying part, EVs. Way at the start of the video, we talked about how they convert into stats. How do you actually obtain them? The easiest way is to use vitamins like protein. One of these will provide 10 attack EVs. However, you need 26 proteins in order to cap a stat at 252, which can get very expensive. There are also the mochi items from Kitakami, which are effectively the same as the vitamins, and the feathers, which only had a single EV point. The other method is to battle Pokemon. Every Pokemon will provide EVs for different stats, and the only way to figure this out is Google. For example, Marill provides 2 HP EVs if we knock it out, meaning we have to farm 126 Marills in order to cap that stat. Fortunately, there are these power items which double the EVs gained for a Pokemon as long as they're holding it. Sounds annoying, right? Don't worry, it gets worse. These EVs from knocking out Pokemon are given to all Pokemon in your party, not just the one in battle. This means if you've ever accidentally knocked something out random, just once with your competitive Pokemon in your party, their EVs are ruined and you have to use items to reduce the EVs. The other really annoying part is the game doesn't really communicate the actual EV numbers to you. You get a cool chart, but it honestly doesn't tell you a whole lot. Because of this, the only way of accurately tracking your EVs is to keep count yourself if you're going for any number other than the maximum of 252. Now combine the manual tracking with EVs going to everyone in your party and it just becomes a whole mess, dude. Honestly, I'm shocked the system has not been streamlined more since I last played Pokemon. It's like nearly identical. Anyway, I spend quite literally millions on vitamins on all my Pokemon to get their EVs straight. I do screw up on somebody's EVs at some point though, and I have to use berries to wipe the slate clean and begin again. I also run out of money and have to grind Goldengo's EVs the old-fashioned way by killing like 40 fletchlings or something. Finally, we're left with the actual moves. This is pretty easy, fortunately, thanks to the streamlining over the years. We can just remember moves from the menu whenever we want in order to access the entire learn set for a Pokemon. Otherwise, we can just use a TM. I do end up wasting like 45 minutes running around Kitakami looking for the knockoff TM, since that's what Bulbapedia told me to do, but it turns out you just have to interact with the TM machine in Kitakami and it gives you the recipes for all the new stuff including knockoff. Egg moves are where you can see the streamlining the most though. Back in the day, you used to have to breed a male Pokemon with a certain move with a female Pokemon of the species you want in order to pass down the egg move. Now you can just buy a mirror herb from one of the shops in that town with the water gym, give it to your egg move recipient, chill on a picnic for a little bit with a random Pokemon with the move you want, and bam, your Pokemon just learns an egg move and no breeding required. I honestly don't know how I feel about this one. Like, the streamlining is cool, but like, what even is the point of breeding Pokemon now? Anyway, so our team is complete, so let's talk about that tournament I alluded to in the intro. While browsing VGCguide.com, one of the other resources they mention other than Pikalytics is victoryroad.pro. This website is basically a hub for VGC news and updates on the competitive scene. From what I've gathered, the big use for this website is the team results from different major tournaments where they'll list out the teams and team sheets for the top players at each event. Great way to see what teams are performing well and find different sets to steal. Outside of that though, Victory Road hosts their own online tournaments periodically called the VR Challenge. These will have hundreds of players sign up, anywhere from some of the top players in the world to random idiots with a YouTube channel like yours truly. Also a prize pool, but I ain't never seen any of that, so I'm just here for the love of the game. I didn't record any of the sign up process for the tournament, but it's super easy. You just gotta make a Battlefly account, link your PayPal, easy peasy. Only sorta sketchy aspect of the sign up process for me was the part requiring submitting your team sheet. I wasn't sure how strict the tournament organizers are over the closed team sheet, which requires listing everything down to the EVs and IVs. I made sure that mine was meticulously accurate down to the what Pokemon are shiny and the fact that my Tyranitar is a lower level than my other guys. Because realistically, there's no reason not to be meticulous here other than laziness. Speaking of team sheets, we should probably cover the biggest difference in tournament play as opposed to Pokemon Showdown on cartridge online play. You can think of VGC as having two styles of play, closed team sheet and open team sheet. Closed team sheet is generally what you'll see on Showdown and on cart, and you can just see the other guy's 6 Pokemon and that's it. No idea of moves, Terra types, or anything. Open team sheet is when each player's Pokemon's moves, Terra types, abilities, and held items are shared with the other player. EVs, natures, and IVs are not shared with the other people, so you'll still have to suss that out based on some damage ranges and everything. All official tournaments, and from what I can tell, the majority of unofficial ones are open team sheet. I do want to note that you can play open team sheet on Pokemon Showdown. It just requires both players to opt into sharing the team sheet with each other. But from my experience at the lower end of the ladder, people just rush to click deny open team sheets, frame one, and hit you with the most esoteric cheese mankind has ever seen. When I first learned about the team sheet styles, open team sheets sounded lame to me, but as I played more and more in VGC, and I started to understand why they do it. I think with a mechanic like terrestrialization, there's just too much randomness in what a Pokemon can run now. Giving players some information lets them strategize and make the games a little faster paced, since you don't have to play as conservatively to figure out what they're going to do. Alright, I got a little sidetracked there, but let's get back to the actual tournament experience. Once the VR challenge began, all I had to do was keep an eye on the Victory Road Discord server as they'd announced the start of each of the 8 rounds. Once the round began, Battlefly would automatically pair you with your opponent in a little chat room where you could just coordinate with your opponent and you could decide on a link code for your battle. And both players' team sheets are automatically linked for each other to look at. Overall, actually participating in the tournament was really intuitive and way more streamlined than I expected. I do recommend. Let's actually hop into some tournament games, shall we? Our first opponent is our boy Brian XD rocking, I don't know archetype names, man, whatever that is. As we talked about before, Indeedee Sneasler is rampant in Regulation H, so I lead off with Sandslash Tyranitar to counter lead. Kilowattrel comes since Air Slash is super effective against 3 of his Pokemon, and Incineroar to round out the comp. Turn 1, we get the matchup we expected and immediately go on the offensive. The Indeedee is holding a Choice Scarf, however, remember earlier we mentioned Sandslash's EVs are calculated for this, so we Terra on Sandslash and one-shot it with Gunk Shot. I actually kind of hate this strategy because if we miss a Gunk Shot, we just lose the game, but it's the only way we can handle this, honestly. Anyway, I swapped Tyranitar out of there for Incineroar to intimidate the Sneasler, and man, look at Sandslash, bro, he's just so cool. Sneasler used its Psychic Seed item, which activated Unburden to make it the fastest thing alive. So it still outspeeds Sandslash, but between the Intimidate, and a very effective typing, and Sandslash's natural bulk, it doesn't like nothing with close combat. Sandslash pulls through and hits the one-shot on Indeedee, so we're sitting pretty. Volcarona comes in to replace Indeedee, so I swap out Incineroar for Kilowattrel, since Air Slash covers both the opponent's Pokemon, and Kilowattrel resists the likely close combat from Sneasler. I have Sandslash hit Earthquake since Kilowattrel is immune and it should kill Sneasler, but he uses Protect and Volcarona sets up a Tailwind, which makes him go way faster than us for 5 turns. Next turn we get pretty lucky. Sneasler's Dire Claw doesn't proc a status on Kilowattrel and Volcarona misses Overheat on Sandslash. Sneasler goes down to another Earthquake and Volcarona is chunked and uses its Berry after both an Earthquake and an Electro Web. This Electro Web low-key could have cost me the game if that Overheat hit, I think. Air Slash would have just been a kill for sure, even if Volcarona terrored into grass. I think my brain was just like, oh, he used Tailwind to double his speed, I should use my speed control option too. Ursaluna Blood Moon comes in and my god, this thing is terrifying in game, bro, he's huge. Sandslash finishes Volcarona with Earthquake and gets some damage in on Ursaluna, but Ursaluna goes Terra Normal and pops both our Pokemon, leaving it down just to Tyranitar and Incineroar, who are the perfect matchup. Our Incineroar is EV to be bulky on the special side, and Tyranitar has Assault Vest, which increases special defense by 50%, and Rock types in Sandstorm get the same buff, so he's insanely especially tanky. First turn out, we low kick and fake out into Ursaluna, but he smartly protects to block, and more importantly, wait out the last Sandstorm turn. I didn't actually realize it was the last Sandstorm turn. On Pokemon Showdown, it just tells you in big letters how many is left. On Pokemon Showdown, it just tells you in big letters how many turns are left, but in game, you have to actually keep track of the duration of effects like weather or terrain. At least that's what I thought this entire tournament. I found out a month later while watching the Frankfurt Regional that there's just a button to check how long stuff like Sandstorm or Psychic terrain lasts, and I'm just stupid. Oops. Anyway, we pull out the dub on our first real battle. However, we haven't actually just won yet. Real tournaments are a best of 3 instead of the single games we were playing on Pokemon Showdown, giving opportunities to adapt to your opponent's strategies. I decided to run the same 4 Pokemon with the same lead duo. It's the only way we can really deal with Indeedee Sneasler, so I think we're locked into Tyranitar Sandslash, unfortunately. However, my opponent goes for Ursaluna Volcarona, which is pretty scary to me. Ursaluna was a raid boss and took 4 of our Pokemon to take it down. Turn 1 I go for a Gunk Shot on Volcarona thinking he may Terra Grass, but he stays put and sets up a Tailwind, and Tyranitar goes for a low kick, which Ursaluna protects. Turn 2 I go for some spread damage with Earthquake and Terra my Tyranitar into Flying type. Except I'm stupid and don't actually click the Terra button and I end up dealing like 60% to my own guy who's supposed to take care of Ursaluna. Volcarona uses Rage Power to draw hits from Ursaluna, but I figured he would, so I just went for Rock Slide on Tyranitar instead of low kicking the Ursaluna, which finishes Volcarona and chunks Ursaluna. Surprisingly, he went for Blood Moon to take out Sandslash instead of Hyper Voice, but I think that's beneficial for me. At least if I didn't hit my own guy. Sneasler comes in for his Volcarona and Incineroar comes in for my Sandslash. He double protects to stop fake out. I Terra my Tyranitar for real in case of a close combat, but he survives the turn with 1 HP and dies to his own Sandstorm while Incineroar dies from both attacks. Yeah, we're doomed here, bro. Let's go game 3. Game 3, I dropped Kilowattrel in favor of Flygon to set up her own counter Tailwind, which ends horribly for us when Volcarona outspeeds and sets up Tailwind, and Blood Moon annihilates Flygon. Flygon ties Volcarona at 100 base speed, but I dropped a few EVs out of speed because I decided to get a little cute with it, and it ends up biting me in the ass here. Sandslash comes in and we actually Terrestrialize and Sandslash gets popped by an Overheat. Yeah, we're doomed and lose 1-2. I'm not quite sure why I didn't just run Incineroar for my lead with Flygon, since Fake Out would let me get my own Tailwind up almost guaranteed, but I'm gonna just chalk it up to being tilted from throwing Game 2 with the no Terra Tyranitar. Our round 2 opponent is Noah, and I already know from the team preview we are cooked. Palafin is one of those Pokemon I rarely saw in Pokemon Showdown, but every time I did, it destroyed me, and I don't even really know what the hell it does, other than like 1 billion damage. Yeah, we kind of just get rolled 0-2 here. We just had no idea what to do or how to deal with that thing. It just honestly wasn't even close. Round 3, we're against Shane's Balance team. I lead Goldengo Kilowattrel since I didn't want Tyranitar out and to immediately get shut down by Alola and Ninetales coming in to change the weather, or Incineroar to give the attack boost to Kingambit thanks to its Defiant. I think I could have not played this any worse, honestly. I Terra Kilowattrel to dodge Rillaboom's Fake Out, but I forgot Sucker Punch from Kingambit will just kill it if I do that. I also Nasty Plot in Goldengo and forgot about the fact that the next turn he can just also click Sucker Punch again. Yeah, we're cooked here. I just forfeit. Game 2, I go for the classic T-Tar Sandslash lead and try to Terra Poison Gunk Shot Rillaboom, but he just fakes out the Sandslash. Rock Slide does a good chunk to Alola and Ninetales when it comes in for Kingambit. On the following turn, I swap out Tyranitar for Goldengo and Sandslash goes down to a Rillaboom high horsepower. I'm not quite sure why I didn't just use Protect if I was planning on swapping T-Tar back in for weather, but I'm just stupid. I send Incineroar in for Sandslash. I decided to not Fake Out and full send a Flare Blitz on Rillaboom since it feels like a likely switch now that its attack dropped. This is a huge play as we chunk Kingambit. This causes him to switch again to Sneasler, and we take down Alola and Ninetales and Sneasler with a Flare Blitz and spread Rock Slide. Things look good, but Incineroar, Goldengo, and Tyranitar all go down to Kingambit and Rillaboom. I definitely think Game 2 was winnable. I kind of just never picked Protect and played a little too greedy. Here's the kind of crappy part of the tournaments. Our next couple of rounds, our opponents both drop from the tournament and we get a free win. Well, on one hand, yeah, cool, we're on the board. But like, we didn't earn it or like learn anything, so who cares? Plus, we go nearly 2 hours without playing, which just sucks, bro. I can't imagine what this is like at official VGC tournaments, waiting forever. At least here I'm in the comfort of my own home playing Showdown in between games. Anyway, our next team is another Balance team. I go with the classic T-Tar Sandslash Incineroar Goldengo comp. Turn 1 I hedge my bet since he's for sure going to Fake Out, and I Protect Sandslash and switch in Incineroar for my own Fake Out and the Intimidate. Plus this lets Sandstorm chip off Dragonite's Multiscale. This goes well as he fakes out the incoming Incineroar and Sandslash protects the Scale Shot. Turn 2, Sandslash hits the Terra Poison Gunk Shot 1-tap on Rillaboom. You know, the whole point we run this set. And Incineroar fakes out Dragonite. Turn 3 is a Wash as we protect each other's stuff. Turn 4 I switch Sandslash out for Tyranitar as we hit a fat Flare Blitz on Kingambit. My logic here is if we eliminate Kingambit, he'll be down to his 2 final Pokemon, meaning he won't be able to reset the attack drop on Dragonite by switching. I figure he'll expect a low kick from Tyranitar and Terra his Kingambit Ghost in order to dodge it, but he doesn't do that. We do get some damage to remove his Black Glasses with knockoff at least. On the next turn, I decide to full send a Mega Rain and a Rock Slide since he can only Sucker Punch one of us and will probably kill his guys. He switches out Dragonite for Sneasler who dies to this combo while Kingambit protects. I go for the same play here again, lose Goldengo in the process and win with a Rock Slide. Oh damn man, it's been a minute since we got a dub. It feels nice though. Next game I go with the same Pokemon but instead lead Tyranitar and Incineroar. I'm not sure why I did this. I feel like it's such a gamble when the opponent is Kingambit. We end up kind of getting put behind momentum-wise from this, as his lead Volcarona goes Terra Fairy and sets up a Quiver Dance. But we managed to claw our way back, and just from Tyranitar's sheer girth and full sending a Flare Blitz or two. Eventually it comes down to Sandslash and Goldengo versus Dragonite and Kingambit, and this is where I misplay. Here's where I should have protected on Sandslash since Dragonite is running extreme speed and sees a low HP target. Terra Flying Dengo eats a Sucker Punch, kills Dragonite, and I'm left in the dreaded Sucker Punch 50-50, which I eventually lose. Speaking of lose, I lose game 3 off leading Tyranitar Sandslash and clicking Swords Dance for no reason instead of just killing the Volcarona, and it gets too big and I can't do anything. I don't know, man. I think I'm like overthinking things. I got like tournament nerves or something. Let's move on to the last game of the tournament I want to cover, and this time we're going against an interesting Sand team. I can't remember this guy said he was running, but one notable thing is the choice band on Excadrill, so we can play around that. I decided to go with Incineroar Flygon as my leads, and they can stack attack drops on the opposing Tyranitar Excadrill who will surely lead. Bring my own Tyranitar Goldengo in the back. Turn 1, we get the matchup we want. Fake out Excadrill and set up Tailwind and Flygon. Tyranitar hits a fat Rock Slide on Incineroar, but tickles Flygon. I decide on the next turn to let Flygon start stacking Breaking Swipes to keep cutting their attacks and the attack of whoever he switches to. I do sacrifice Incineroar to Excadrill in order to get a free switch. And Flygon hits another Breaking Swipe, it takes 1 billion damage from knockoff despite Tyranitar being like -3 attack. With my own fast Tyranitar in, I low kick his Tyranitar for a kill and accidentally click Feint on Excadrill who switches out to Electabuzz. Oops. I'm really hitting some crazy misclicks, man. I'm gonna just chalk that up to the live tournament nerfs. Nothing noteworthy happens for a few turns, we just trade some hits, Flygon goes down, Excadrill goes down. The big play happens when I survive a Clanging Scales with 8 HP on the Goldengo as I set up Nasty Plot. Once Tyranitar is in, he finishes off the fast Electabuzz while Goldengo protects, and then Goldengo takes the win with the Make It Rain. Game 2 we run it back with the same setup, but this time we're against Electabuzz Como-O. Here we fake out the Como-O, set up Tailwind, and surprisingly our Flygon outspeeds the Electabuzz, who hits a taunt on us, but he's too late. Next turn I Parting Shot Electabuzz, predicting a switch, and get Goldengo when his Flygon gets some damage out with Breaking Swipe. Como-O hits his Clangorous Soul move, which gives like +2 to every single stat, but cuts his HP by 50%, so it's a pretty scary Pokemon now. Still, we outspeed thanks to Tailwind, and we hit the fattest prediction of our life by hard reading the Protect with Feint, breaking the protection, and killing Como-O before it becomes a problem. The rest of the battle is relatively uninteresting, just Excadrill doing 1 million damage, Electabuzz doing Electabuzz things, and Talonflame setting up Tailwind for my opponent. Once my opponent is down to just Talonflame and Excadrill, Excadrill uses Earthquake, but Flygon is a Levitate, so she's immune. Once I see that he's choice locked into Earthquake, I know that the battle is over once Talonflame is down. And Flygon ensures that with a Breaking Swipe and some chip damage. Hey dude, we actually won a set, sick. Technically we're at 3 wins now, but the other 2 were forfeits, so... I have a couple more rounds after this, but they're more of what we've seen, where I just overthink myself into a loss. I'll just save you time and skip them, they're really not interesting. Overall, after 8 total rounds, I ended the tournament at like 3 or 5, or whatever it was. Although, just one of them was an actual win. The whole stream for the 8 rounds was like a little over 7 hours, which honestly was exhausting, and I definitely think it affected my play towards the end, but I wouldn't really blame that on the tournament. It's more like a streaming and attempting to be engaging for 7 hours type thing, you know? If you're just chilling at home doing chores or whatever and play when you hear the Discord ping announcing the next round, I can see that being much more relaxed than my experience. Even though I lost the majority of the sets, I think the majority of my losses came down to boneheaded plays that had like no logic behind them, or choosing random leads that don't fit at all, or just awful misclicks. Other than that game where I got rolled by Palafin and I had no idea what the hell that thing does, I feel like every set was totally winnable if I just played a little bit better. I will say, I did have a ton of fun though, and definitely want to play in another tournament online soon. Probably a never a regional though, they ain't got those where I am, and I sure as hell ain't traveling to Milwaukee alone of all places. There's always local events, I suppose, but those were like a pain to even locate. There's an official event locator on the Pokemon website, but while you can filter events by VGC, most of the time it doesn't work well in shops that run events only for the trading card game are displayed. Also, there's like no information for the event displayed at all, so you just have to start Googling around to find what time an event starts, what day an event starts, or God forbid, you gotta make a phone call to them. I literally had to Google around for like 2 hours until I stumbled upon the Twitter account for my local tournament organizer who posts about upcoming events. Maybe like I'm dumb or something, but I don't know, dude. It just felt very unclear and way more difficult than it should be. The Pokemon Company should really work on that event locator. Official events aside, I don't think after my month of learning competitive Pokemon, I'm an expert or anything by any means, but I'd like to think I have an okay grasp of the fundamentals of how to play. I don't think my esoteric Sandslash play will revolutionize the game, but I think I found a pretty unique niche for a Pokemon that sets us apart from the very similar Excadrill. And while Sandslash still sucks, I think that analytical skill is a good one to develop in order to learn the game. I'll chalk this up as a successful month-long learning experience, but I definitely have a long way to go until I consider myself good. Whether you're a newcomer to the series or a seasoned vet, a teenager, or a 33-year-old idiot gym bro, Pokemon is for everyone, and I hope this video convinces some of you guys to take the plunge and learn competitive Pokemon yourself, even if you don't follow my process exactly. If you did take the plunge, drop a comment down below and subscribe. Let me hear your story too. Maybe together we can convince newcomers that competing isn't as scary as it seems.